Back in June of 1967, the Middle East was an absolute powder keg, just waiting for a spark. And what happened next was a war so fast, so decisive, that it was over in just 132 hours. But its shockwaves, we're still feeling those today. This is the story of the Six-Day War. So let's get right into it, because this is the big question, right? How on earth did one seemingly outmatched nation manage to defeat three of its neighbors in what has to be one of the most stunning military victories of the entire 20th century? Well, the answer is this incredible mix of strategy, pure guts, and frankly, desperation. You see, to really get this war, we've got to rewind the clock a little. This thing didn't just happen out of nowhere. The Middle East in the spring of '67 was a pressure cooker, and this conflict was really the violent eruption of 2 decades of simmering hostility. And just look at these numbers. I mean, on paper, this is a total mismatch. The combined Arab forces had more than double the troops, more than triple the tanks, and more than triple the aircraft. If you were a betting person just looking at the stats, you would not have put your money on Israel. And here's the kicker. Their biggest problem was geography. Israel was shaped like an hourglass, dangerously skinny in the middle. At its narrowest point, it was just 7 miles wide. That meant there was no room to fall back, no room to regroup, no defense in depth. A successful attack could literally slice the country in half. This reality forced their military into a single high-stakes mindset. You either attack first or you perish. So in the final weeks, things just escalated with lightning speed. It all kicks off with some bad intel from the Soviets. Then, Egypt moves its army into the Sinai desert and tells the UN peacekeepers, who were there as a buffer, to pack their bags and leave. But this right here, May 22nd, that's the point of no return. Egypt blockades the Straits of Tiran, cutting off Israel's lifeline to the south. For Israel, that wasn't just a provocation, it was an act of war. Their new government felt it had no choice left. And just in case there was any doubt about what was at stake, you had rhetoric like this. The words of Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser were being broadcast all over the Arab world, making it crystal clear that, from Israel's point of view, this was a fight for their very existence. So what do you do when you're outnumbered, cornered, with your back against the wall? Well, Israel's leaders decided to bet everything, and I mean everything, on one incredibly audacious roll of the dice. A preemptive strike designed to win the war before it even really got started on the ground. It was called Operation Focus, and the plan was as brilliant as it was risky. Step 1, hit the runways. Trap the enemy's planes on the ground. Make them sitting ducks. Then, circle back and destroy the aircraft themselves. But the key to the whole thing was this insane efficiency. Israeli pilots were trained to land, refuel, rearm, and get back in the air in just 8 minutes. Think about that. This let them launch wave after relentless wave of attacks. And the result? It was absolutely devastating. The Israeli jets flew in low, under Egyptian radar, catching them completely by surprise. And get this, they attacked just after the Egyptian dawn patrols had landed and the pilots were having breakfast. Look at this chart. At 8 a.m., Egypt has a powerful air force of over 450 planes. By 11 a.m., just 3 hours later, it's practically gone. So by the end of the very first day, the war in the air was basically over. After crushing Egypt's air force, the Israelis just turned their attention to Jordan and Syria, who had joined the fight, and they did the exact same thing to them. Israel now owned the skies. Okay, so with the enemy air forces completely wiped out, Israel's ground troops were totally unleashed. They could now fight a war on 3 separate fronts without having to constantly worry about being attacked from above. And the way they did this is pretty cool. It's a classic military move, something Napoleon was famous for. It's called the strategy of the central position. The idea is, since you're in the middle and you can't fight everyone at once, you use your position to concentrate all your power on one enemy, knock them out fast, and then quickly pivot to the next one before they can team up on you. So, first up was the biggest threat, Egypt, down in the Sinai desert. Israeli tanks punched right through their main line of defense. And then, a panicked and really confused retreat order from the Egyptian High Command turned what could have been an organized defense into a total chaotic rout. Israeli tank columns just raced across the desert, reaching the Suez Canal in an unbelievable 100 hours. Next, they pivoted to the central front. Jordan had entered the war and started shelling West Jerusalem, so Israeli paratroopers were diverted from the Sinai to fight some of the absolute worst, most brutal battles of the war. We're talking close quarters combat for a fortified position called Ammunition Hill, and then ultimately for the historic Old City of Jerusalem itself. And the final front was the Golan Heights, controlled by Syria. Now, you got to picture this. This wasn't just a hill, it was a fortress, a massive plateau lined with bunkers and fortifications. For years, Syrian artillery up there had been shelling Israeli farms and towns down below. It was a literal, brutal uphill battle, but by the sixth day, that too had fallen to the Israelis. And just like that, it was over. 6 days, the fighting was done, but the consequences of those 6 days, well, they were about to fundamentally and permanently change the entire Middle East. And this is maybe the single most important result of the war. The map was completely redrawn. Israel, a country that started the week just trying to survive, ended it in control of a massive amount of new land. They took the Gaza Strip and the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan, and the Golan Heights from Syria. The land under their control more than tripled. But let's not forget the cost of this victory, because it was staggering. The speed of the war is deceptive. This was an incredibly intense and violent conflict. In less than a week, nearly 20,000 soldiers from all sides were killed. That's a huge number for such a short period of time. So why are we still talking about this war all these decades later? Because of this. On the one hand, Israel finally got that strategic defense in depth that it always craved. But on the other hand, it now found itself in military control of territories that were home to about 1 million Arabs. And this new reality created the entire framework for everything that came next, the whole idea of land for peace, and it set the stage for the conflicts and struggles that are still going on today. And that leaves us with this huge central question. 6 days completely redrew the map of the Middle East, but did they draw a path towards a lasting peace? Or did they just draw the battle lines for the next 50+ years of conflict? That's the complex legacy of this short, transformative war,